Dumelang Sanbonani. Today we have a special guest for you. And before I get all excited, and I'm going to be hosting you today on Lesedi podcast. If you are new to the channel, please make sure that you hit the bell button to be notified for more of these amazing conversations, as well as subscribe to the channel for more of the videos, right? And to anyone who's returning, thank you very much for trusting us to host you once again with more of an in-depth conversation with one of your favorite people that you see on your timeline, in your magazines, on radio, literally anywhere you go, including the social scenes. Just to briefly get you updated on what I'm talking about, this lady was born in 88. She graduated in BCom in finance and investment management, and she graduated from UJ. She once worked as a banker before pursuing a career as a DJ. Can you imagine? She was probably playing around with some finances, over there in her space there, just so she can keep herself interested. Because you know how banking can be a tad bit boring. Humble with a hint of Kanye, she wears a crown of an intellectual. On her tough nut to crack personality, Nongaba, Nozuko, Khaka is how they are engaged and related to her in the world of banking. In the music and social entertainment space, she is the exceptionally talented Miss Cosmo. She serves hip hop on a silver soul therapy platter whenever she gets behind the decks. Her social media account has many of us running to the gym to tone up, and she has redefined feminine masculinity. Even if we don't necessarily make it to the gym physically, we draw literally enough strength to push ourselves to get through the bare minimum. Before I introduce you to this lovely bombshell, welcome once again. Hey, Mama!
Hey, how are you?
I'm good, thanks, and you?
I'm good. I'm just looking at myself on the screen. I'm like, oh, it's so big.
What's big? What you mean? As in, like,
no, I just feel like I'm so close, but it's fine. Don't worry. We'll make it happen. We'll make it work.
No, I think the ratios are just balanced. You good today?
All right. I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. How's the moving doing? I remember when I asked you for this interview, you're like, yo, Ma, I'm like moving houses, like boxes everywhere.
I'm still living out of boxes and suitcases. I haven't unpacked my clothes because I've just been like, I'll see that later. So everything has just been like the furniture, moving everything around, trying to find space for certain things, and getting rid of certain things because there's no space. So that's just been like my big headache right now. But it's good. It's good to be in a new space. It feels fresh.
And also, are you finding that you have maybe perhaps hoarder tendencies? Because we have this thing as women, like we literally keep everything, like from the first show to the first everything to just about anything. Is like of the things that you feel like you have to get rid of. Like, what have you found to be things that you're like, okay, I can get rid of this?
I think we all hoard. Yes, that's true. And I started realizing how much I was a hoarder the first time we moved. So I had moved into my old place maybe about 7 years ago. And
cool.
I think that one was the big, purge of things that I didn't need. Because at that point I was like, these things are too much, it's unnecessary, and moving all the way across was too much. So after that, I kind of learned how to let go of certain things. And every time I buy new clothes, obviously now my cupboard gets too small. So then I would obviously be forced to give away clothes. So I think that's the easiest thing for me to get rid of is like clothes and shoes, especially if I know I haven't worn them in ages. I usually just give away to charity, or I give away during the winter time. So that's become a habit of mine that I've kind of gotten into. Outside of that, I also learned like I used to get into this thing of like keeping a lot of junk. The what if I need it at some point? Maybe it's a ribbon here or maybe it's a piece of paper there. Now I'm just like, I don't need it. It's not gonna affect my daily life, so it must go. Yeah.
Oh, shoot. But what do you think actually makes us keep these things? Like, do we attach them to memories? Do we like why do you think like we feel the need to actually just keep stuff?
I don't know. I think it is a memory thing. I think it is an attachment thing, but also I think it's because we just want to feel sentimental about certain things, and it's always like the weirdest sentiment when it comes to something. It's like, oh my gosh, this is my ribbon from my primary school, and it's like, yeah, it was primary school. You're now like a full grown adult. You don't need it anymore. So it's little things like that I'm learning to be like, I this is unnecessary now. You know.
Oh wow, I can actually
Mm.
relate. And if you're ever gonna have any of those drives for charity, please call me up. I've got a lot of stuff, and I'm pretty sure the people in my community would also love to chip in with that. You know, because yeah,
Oh,
we are more fortunate than not. And even if we may not be the richest of people, there's still things that we feel like there's no need for them to have, or we don't use them as often as we'd like. So if there's anything, just hit me up, and I'm sure we'll all want to chip in for that.
100%, especially now because we're going into the winter time. So this is usually when
Especially.
I do. Yeah, this is usually when I do a bit of a drive because I know number one, obviously, I'm trying to clear up some space selfishly, clearing up
Yeah.
some space in my cupboard. But at least when I do clear it up, it is going to a good cause. So I do it once a year, and yeah, man, I think I'll be able to give my details at the end, and we'll be able to then gather whatever we can and then give to the people who need it. What
You know how the
happened?
internet is. No, it's the internet, baby.
Yeah, I know.
It lags, my love. Yes. Also, thank you
Yeah.
to everybody that's tuned into the stream. I'm seeing quite a lot of names here. Uzanela joined in already at 4:42. She says she can't wait. Lodi says she's here. Pindi says Togoza Koko. Morgan's sending us flames and fire emojis. Nonhlanhla,
Yay!
teacher. Iris, Pluma, Lolly, Perseverance. Oh, this list is hectic. Also, guys, if you have a question for Unoni, Ms. Cosmo, rather, please let me know and put it over there so I can be able to also let you also be involved. You know, as much as this conversation is something that I die to have with the people that I admire and I look up to and I find so much inspiration from, it's also very much open to you as well. So if you would also like
Yeah.
to ask a question, give a compliment, a high five there, let the lady know and let her get her flowers while she can still receive them, right? On that,
Yes.
Miss Cosmo, tell me about your upbringing. Where did you grow up? How did you grow up? Like you have like Juan.
I'm born and bred in Johannesburg. So I know a lot of people are just like, no one's from Joburg. I'm from Joburg.
We are. We are.
And there's nothing wrong with that either. I don't know why there's this
At all.
perception that you're not allowed to be from Joburg. I think it's people need to get rid of that idea. But nonetheless, born and bred here. And I
Yeah.
think it's also because I was lucky enough to have parents who were educated enough to at least move to Johannesburg early for us to do our schooling here. So
Mhm.
I was born in Deep Kloof. I stayed in Deep Kloof until I was 6. And then we moved to the burbs where we moved through to Sunning Hill. I moved there until I was probably about 12. Moved to
Okay.
Sandton. So I went to Bryanston Primary, went to Bryanston High School. And yeah, went to UJ for university. And it's just been a very like I don't know. I think a very mediocre upbringing, like most people, whoever grows up in Johannesburg knows that it was always just about like the fun-loving stuff, whether we are grooving on the weekend, doing picnics on the weekend, and of course going to UJ as well. Also, kind of pushed me towards other experiences as well, which was really good. So yeah, I think I had a wholesome upbringing, even though I was in a city, because people say when you are more of a wholesome person when you grow up as Lalini, but it's like, look, at least we have electricity here
And
and
running
Wi-Fi.
toilets. And actually, all holidays we remain okay. We actually go
Yes,
visit them on holidays,
yes,
whereas they go back
exactly.
home. And it's funny because most of their lives, for people who are not like city based, they spend most of their lives away from home. Whereas the advantage for us is we spend most of our time at home. You know,
Yes.
um, Tell me, are your parents still together? Are they still like a beautifully married couple? Do you have siblings? Unambamang in the sibling, line. Like, tell me more about your family.
No, my parents are not together anymore. My
Okay.
parents actually divorced when I was 6.
Mm.
But I still have a very good relationship. I still live with my mom actually.
Oh, cool.
I'm just hoping she's not gonna come in here and open the door like she always does. You know, parents are invasive. They don't really care. They just walk in. But outside of her, I also have a really good relationship with my dad. It's just obviously unfortunate that they did split up at that point in time. I do have an older sister. I have a younger
Okay.
brother. My younger brother is my father's son. So
Mm.
yeah, we all have a really great relationship. My sister just recently had a baby boy. He's a
Oh,
year and a half.
congratulations.
Yeah, he's a year and a half. So everyone, because I post him all the time because I live with him because I work from home. So
Mm.
when she's at work and I'm hanging out with him, I'm always posting selfies. And people are just like, when did you have a child? What's going on? Relax. No, not yet. I don't have a child. But
Wouldn't they like to know anyway?
yeah, well, not just yet. But yeah, I guess he's my child in training because I'm learning how to navigate around him. So he's quite a blessing. We're excited to have him in the house.
Definitely. Those rugrats are actually such a pleasure and
Mm.
also the biggest annoyance ever. It's almost like, how do you become this cute person and also like this very annoying
Yes,
person? Like, how?
yes. Because he's so naughty and he's always in
No,
the
they're
fridge.
actually quite a pleasure. In the fridge.
Yeah, he's got this obsession with the fridge for some reason. Like the moment you open the fridge, he comes running from wherever he is and he just wants
Oh,
to
that's
see
so
what's
crazy.
happening. And even this morning, well, yeah, I had to stop him from like playing with the tomatoes because he wanted to throw it across the lounge. I was like, yeah, when no.
At least he's not that kid who went viral, Loki belly frigi, like literally belly frigi. Like, I think maybe he was trying to react the Cremora advert like it's not inside, it's on top, maybe something like that. I don't know. These kids,
Maybe.
right? And also, there's something that you said that I found very interesting about your parents divorcing when you were 6, and then okay, obviously that also motivated the move of you leaving the hood and then moving over to suburbia. What did you perhaps learn? Maybe not then, but what have you learned about relationships, especially growing up in a family where they once loved each other, long enough to have these beautiful children, and then it didn't work out. So, what lessons did you get about that particular relationship dynamic?
Look, when they split up, I was still young.
Mm,
But I think now that I'm an adult and I'm kind of looking back at their relationship, I'm seeing that, you know what, people change. I think that's one thing we also need to realize as humans is that
yeah.
we all go through change, we all go through differences, we all go through sometimes life just doesn't pan out the way that we had planned it. And I think that's specifically possibly what happened with my parents is that they were at odds with each other and it just couldn't come together anymore. And I think that's
Mm,
one thing we need to understand about life is that we can't always hop on about this person did this, that, and the next thing. It's one of the things I'm kind of going through at the moment, is realizing that, look, I can't expect some person to kind of stay the same for however many years. We all evolve as
mm.
time goes on. And sometimes we've reached the time in a person's life and we need to kind of move on.
Actually, there's actually a comment here by Lalindani Prince, and he says that Umama is probably saying, "Agna celebrity lagwam."
It's so painful, honestly.
Thank you for sharing that. I find that also someone else says that Jane says, I love that her stuff is not public. And that's something that anyone wouldn't necessarily just pick up off the bat about you, that you come from this broken home type of situation. And yet you remain to be this very strong willed woman. Like, what do you think is like birthed the strength, the energy, the courage for you to be so strong-minded to want to do the things that you want to do and pursue in your life? Where does that come from? Is it from one of your parents? Also, where does the music interest come from? Did you grow up maybe turning table, spinning decks with like a cousin or malume or or something? Like, where does it come from?
Why do we all have a malube
We
the drunk
all have a
uncle?
malume. Yeah, we all. It's a black like signature. Okay.
Ish, my poor uncle. Ish, ngiyamkhumbula shem. But all right. So to answer your first question, my strong will, I think, also was part and parcel because of the divorce. It's just one of those things where you learn to operate without being dependent on somebody or being dependent on a certain structure, because I do feel that sometimes it is a little bit easier, and I'm not going to say that it's something that I wish upon anybody else. I don't. I mean, everybody wants their parents to kind of stay together, but I do think because my parents parted ways, it kind of forced the three of us to get stronger together as the three who were kind of left behind. You know what I mean? So we had to fend for each other. Everybody had to pull their weights. Everybody had to come together and make things happen for each other. So that's why we still live together. Firstly, is because we're trying to survive, and of course, COVID wasn't any easier. So I mean, you know. So yeah, so I think that's where the strong will kind of comes in, to constantly say, don't depend on a second person. Just make sure that you push for yourself so you can make it to the next step. But with regards to the music, I come from a very musical family. I mean, my grandfather was in a jazz band. My dad owns a jazz bar in Newtown, and as well as just my mom was also in the school choir. So it's just one of those. It was always musically inclined within that space. And my dad, whenever he would drop me off at school, he would play like different jazz artists in the car to try and persuade me to go in that direction. But
Sorry, Dad.
he wasn't waiting for me to hear hip hop. And then I said, bye bye.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, but I got into hip hop because of my cousin, actually. So my cousin used to go to that club that every hip hop artist always talks about. Used to go to Le Club, which was in Joburg CBD, there
Okay.
by Carlton Center. So she was old enough to go. I wasn't old enough to go, and I used to get so hacked
Wow.
every Saturday because I was like, "Where's she going? Why can't she take me with her?"
Take me
Um,
with you.
but then she would always kind of bring the music to us afterwards and be like, "Yo, we heard this jam, we heard that jam," and she would play a couple of songs to us all the time. So she introduced me to the likes of Missy Elliott, MC Light, obviously some of the rappers who were also featured at the club, the Amus of the world. I had met through my cousin. So she was very pivotal from that perspective. And yeah, man, I think it just kind of grew from there. It was just an immediate attraction, and I've always been in love with hip hop ever since I was a young girl.
Wow, I also am noticing that there's so many women influences around you, from your mom to your older sister to even your cousin who inspired, the journey that you took. And what do you think is the underlining message about womanhood and sisterhood? Like, what perhaps is the world, or even as sisters amongst each other, what are we missing to get in terms of the relationship that we're supposed to keep with fellow women?
Geez, I really feel like we need to have open communication. I think that's what helps
Yeah.
us with regards to being able to stick together and push each other forward. We don't really hold back. When one person's emotional, you give them that space to be emotional. When they want to do something, we're constantly supporting each other. So I think that's what women as a whole need to do. They need to understand that we're all at a back end already because we're living in a man's world. So what more would it hurt for us to kind of push each other forward and trying to support each other as opposed to bringing each other down, because sometimes I find, especially in the entertainment industry, it's always one person must be at the top. But why, when we can all survive? The pie is big enough for everybody. So rather we push each other so that we can show the world that we are worthy of whatever platforms we're on.
Wow, that's actually so interesting. And thank you so much, from a fellow woman, for allowing to talk to me and engaging with me on my platform. I mean, I don't, you don't know me from a bar of soap or anything like that, but you were so open, like you're so open to engaging and whatever this woman is about to talk to me about, okay, Ma, let's go, we'll wing it, so I really, really appreciate your time and you also wanting to share who you are with my audience as well, and for also bringing your audience over to learn about our audience as well. So this is the same women empowerment that we're talking about, and allowing each other to just be like, can I just hear you out, like, and then I'll draw my conclusion from there, and not necessarily
Yeah.
perceive you from afar, and like, oh no, and I'm like, but how's that going to help any of us? Like, it's just an assumption. You know what they say about
Exactly.
assumptions, right?
Exactly. It leaves an S out of me and you. But I love your platform. I mean, I started engaging with your content because of your YouTube channel prior to the podcast. So I love the fact that everybody has this like taboo idea of what ubungoma is and what spirituality is and whatever. So for me, I was like, wow, okay, she's speaking about it on YouTube and it's supposed to be
Yeah.
like a hidden secret. So for me, I thought that was really cool. So that's why I subscribed to your channel and obviously then followed you on social. So big ups to you for at least also, flying that flag, because I don't think our pants know exactly what YouTube is. So baby, you're the
I doubt.
introduction for that.
I doubt a lot. Thank you so much also for your kind words. And sometimes you never really realize what you're doing until you hear someone else affirm you. And we don't necessarily do it for the affirmations, but it's always like it's more gratifying when you realize that it reaches so many corners of the world, and it ends up making the world so much smaller. And I think that's also the same thing that you do with your music as well. Speaking on the topic of ubungoma, what's your relationship with your ancestors, if you have any? Do you have any belief systems that you feel are strong? Were you raised in a staunchly Christian family? Like, can you tell us more about, religion and spirituality as a whole for you as an individual?
Mm. I grew up in a very religious family. My mom and my grandmother, my mom and my aunts actually, all very heavily within the church, Methodist church. So that's kind of the direction I'd also taken within my church as well. So I'm still attending the Methodist churches as well. My dad, funny enough, is agnostic.
Cool.
He's a man of science. He just says he doesn't believe in anything, doesn't believe in our plans, doesn't believe in God. He's just existing. And it's a very weird thing to have a conversation about, but you just allow people to have their beliefs. I think I just got to a point where I'm like, I can't force him to kind of believe or subscribe to certain thing, because at the end of the day, we all have choices as humans. My grandmother on my dad's side, funny enough, is actually Jehovah's Witness.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so it's all just a little bit of everything. I did experience the Jehovah's Witness church once or twice with my grandmother. Didn't really speak to me. I was very much more inclined towards the Methodist Christian church. So that's why I've kind of stuck with that side from a religious perspective. I have been going to church all my life. Didn't practice the spiritual tradition, purely because both sides of my family didn't practice at all. But it's just been something that I've also just been kind of growing into recently myself. I think also just out of curiosity, but also because I mean, sometimes like you grow up and you realize that people are saying, hey, but hey, they've got a Thanksgiving. And I'm like, okay, well, I went to church. What? I should be fine. you know? So obviously, out of curiosity, you kind of listen to what other people have to say to open up your mind, to broaden your sphere from that perspective. So I think after that was me kind of taking my steps as well to kind of decide what am I going to do from my spiritual path. And I have consulted with one or two people, Sangoma, obviously from my own journey perspective, to find out what is it that I need to do to kind of be a better person. And I think that introspection also comes in with a lot of people, maybe say later on in life, or maybe say when after I've realized that there's certain things that I felt were missing, and I needed to kind of piece the puzzle together. So I think for me, I'm still just figuring it out. I don't really know what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, which is why I went on your YouTube channel, because that was also a few questions answered. And yeah, I think I'm still I'm still taking my time with it, but one day at a time, you know?
That is very true. So, with a career of yours that sends you to the streets, literally, like
Mm.
you live in the streets, because all your gigs are sending you out to all these different hotspots. You spend so much time touring. Yes, there's a certain groundedness with the show that you have on 5FM. But also, with that said, how do you find to actually help yourself, to ground yourself? Like, what rituals, and by rituals I mean any basic everyday activity that you
Mm.
do that helps you center back, like pull
Mm.
in the reins and remind you, and also not get caught up in the noise of the world, or people hyping you up all the time. What is it that helps you pull yourself back to your center?
Initially, it was always just having family and friends that kind of remind you, Agna celebrity la. That's a wake up call, firstly. But outside of that, I think that's a very important thing. Also, people need to remember that they need to have the right people around them, because having yes men around you doesn't benefit you at all.
Yes.
If you are just gonna have people who just egg you on in the wrong direction, not gonna help. But outside of other people, I spend a lot of time by myself because, like I said, I work from home,
Yeah.
and I find myself just kind of, centering from a perspective of, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to achieve? Firstly,
Mhm.
I pray a lot, obviously, because of my religious background. So
Definitely.
I've always had a very strong, I've always felt a strong relationship with God, and that needs to be a
Mhm.
personal relationship. A lot of people have hearsay about what they feel about the church. And look, I understand to some extent, because sometimes it's the human element of the church that ruins the experience for a lot of people. Sometimes people can take advantage of other people. I mean, we've seen it all the time on social media. So I feel it's very important for someone to have a personal, direct relationship with God in order for you to still feel that relationship and that religion, without you feeling like there's too many things clouding it as well. But outside of my prayer, I've tried meditating.
Yeah.
Didn't quite work. And too many things happening up here.
Yeah.
I think I need to settle my mind a little bit, but I do want to try it again. So I'll probably get into it again. Obviously, also just going through my spiritual journey as well,
Yeah.
with just trying to figure out myself. I have gotten into Ukpasha as well, with just once or twice, just to kind of feel that relationship with my
Yeah.
ancestors as well. But yeah, I still feel that my alone time also just serves me the best purpose, because I get to kind of unpack what's happening in my head, and then
Yeah.
kind of figure out, okay, which direction am I taking for the day?
That's excellent. And I love that you're so multidimensional when it comes to your faith practices, because a lot of us want to group things or group people
Mm,
and say it's either you believe in God or Abapansi, whereas where do humans come from first and foremost?
mm,
We
mm,
land on the planet, but the planet, where does it come from? So when you understand the different dynamics of what makes up belief or faith systems, then you allow yourself to literally be fluid and go to all the spaces that invite you. Like how your grandmother being a Konja Utayini, the the church that she's with.
yes, I'm
Um,
Methodist.
yeah, no, the other one, the other Gogo.
Oh, she's Jehovah's Witness.
Exactly. So how, as much as she also introduced you to something, but you tried it,
Mm,
but the spirit said, "No, I'm cool, thanks." And it's
mm,
okay. It's okay.
mm,
Also just jumping onto, or being curious enough to jump onto like a GMTV and notice that, hey, but there's something that's going on here, and also this girl looks like just us. She talks our language, so it's quite interesting. And
mm.
just being able to fill your mind and your spirit with all this information makes you yet a better person. That's why you're
Yeah.
curious enough to go into yoga. We don't use yoga necessarily in Ubungoma or in Black practices, but for that ethnic group, it makes sense. And I'd actually
Mm.
like to encourage you. I don't know, what's your relationship like with water? Can you swim?
I can. I mean, girl, I went to Branston Primary. I went to
Come
Branston High.
on,
We're like,
wait. Come on.
yes, I can swim.
Okay. Orushapelani tuba, guys. Hey,
Sorry.
Orushapelani tuba. Okay. If you
You
didn't
gave
know,
me an
now you know.
opening. I took it.
No, do your thing. I mean, like I'm holding space for you. So please
Yeah.
fill the room, right? So I'm glad that you know how to swim because also when you know how to float, and I'm bringing this back to meditation, right? Um, if you're going to sit in a room and try to, as they demonstrate on videos, like, no, you sit, you cross your legs and you quiet in your mind, perhaps you can light a candle, but you're like, yo, I also have so many things I have to do. When you bring yourself closer to natural environments, it almost forces you because that energy is so strong that it takes over you, right? So I would like to introduce you to like water meditation, where you can get into a pool in your cute bathing suit, you can lie back and even float. When you start floating, your ears get covered, and now all you can hear is the movement of the water. So all you now got to stop is just your mind from racing because the ears are now blocked by the sound of the water, and now you're forced to be encompassed into this world. So even in the shower, for instance, so move around with you finding your space and your center. You're going to find it in the most weirdest places. For someone who's got an amazing body like yourself, even with gym and working out, you could be used to the paces of doing your workout regime, but also you're actually meditating while you're doing it. That's why a lot of people say, I go to gym and it's the best place for me to think. That's a form of meditation. So don't think about meditation in its conventional practices, but in how it actually works for you. Because at the end of the day, you want a more relaxed version of you, a more composed version of you. And no matter how you find that, let that be your medium.
Which makes sense because I actually used to road run quite often, and I felt a lot more energetic because of the road running, and I miss it because I stopped running obviously because things started getting weird in South Africa with GBV, and I've always been scared of being captured because I'm small, so anyone can just snatch me and I'll just be missing. So I just got a little, like, maybe I might just take a pause on this one. But hopefully I can find a team, a road running team, and I can get back into it again. But running definitely was my center. I know I used to enjoy it a lot, just me and the road and my music, and I would just clear out. But I'll try that water thing. I hate being cold though, so I don't know if I can do it in winter. But I will try. Definitely just sit in the garden. Maybe I think that's what I need.
Definitely. Yeah.
Because being in my room doesn't necessarily help. There's too many things happening in here.
I mean, like you created the environment, so if there's any distraction, you put it there, So yeah, so your room is not the best place. It's also like trying to study in your room, like, okay, bye, man. Okay, fall asleep on the bowl of popcorn.
Exactly.
I noticed that you have a single named Ubaningi, and also part of my research, I noticed that that's actually one of your siblings' names. So Ubaningi Uban.
My sibling's name? No. I don't have a sibling by the name of Baningi. Who said that?
That is the craziest thing!
Who said that? Wow, that's the first time I've ever heard anybody saying that. I think that must have been misinformation, or maybe somebody must have hoped that it was their sibling's name, but it wasn't mine.
No. I misread it. It actually says latest single, Booty and Baningi.
Yes.
There we go. My bad, girl. I got excited there. No, I'm giving you siblings that you don't even have, girl. Come on.
No, it's okay. So I do have 2 new singles out, Baningi as well as Booty. Both of them feature female powerhouses. And for me, that's an intentional thing. I always want to work with women in the industry. I always need a female voice in all of my songs, just so people can also just pay attention to more females. I don't think they get as much recognition as they deserve, And yeah, man, I enjoyed the message that comes along with Baningi because it talks about power and unity and women coming together and Imbogodo and us being stronger as a unit, and that's why Sibaningi, So it's a beautiful song. I still feel that's one of the songs that was kind of slipped on, but we're gonna bring it back. We're gonna make it happen. Yeah.
We'll always bring it back. Just put up the links and then we'll always retweet or we'll share. It literally takes nothing away from anybody if they see people promoting their work and for them to share that content. It's like the kindest thing that you can do in the social media era right now, legit. And speaking about your music as well, and also largely around women empowerment. Tell us, please, about She Social SA podcast. What's that about? Like, why does it mean so much to you? What made you start it? And where are you planning on taking it? What is it?
All right. So She Social started as just a platform for me to kind of give to women within the entertainment industry. And that's not necessarily just artists, it's everybody, whether you are a photographer, you're an artist, you're a fashion designer, you are a musician, you're a rapper, you are a producer. I just wanted to create a platform for females to feel like they can feel empowered and also connect with like-minded women as well. So that's why a
Yeah,
lot of the time it would always be a prominent woman, but also somebody on the up and coming. And
notice that.
I started it initially with the event portion, which I did events in 2018, I think it was. Yeah,
Okay.
2018. But then obviously I just kind of paused it a bit because it was just getting, well, obviously the conversation with the venue just became a bit difficult. But the whole point of it was to create a monthly event for females to feel like they have a home to explore their craft and for them to showcase what they're made of. Then I kind of had to put that on pause because life happened and then COVID happened. And with
Yeah.
COVID, then I was like, okay, well, how do I bring it back without necessarily being in a public space? So that's what birthed the podcast. And with the
Okay.
podcast, I kind of created still the same kind of thinking is let us have like-minded conversations with
Yeah.
women within the creative space, but also speaking to up-and-coming ladies as well as women who are prominent within the space. So that for me was what was important about the She Social podcast. And did it last year. It did pick up and it did well, but now I'm
Okay.
trying to redirect it. So I am going to bring it back. I know everyone's just like, hey, we need more episodes. I am
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
bring it
yeah.
back, but I want to bring it back on a bigger scale because initially it was on Zoom. So now I'm going to try and see if I can do a lot more personal conversations and also just engage with what women are up to and how they can just share their stories, you know?
No, that's absolutely fantastic. I'm like, I love a woman who celebrates other women. Like there's nothing more powerful and even just sexy on its own than that. It really, really like your energies just blossom by virtue of you being able to celebrate someone else. And you know how we were even in high school or even in school surroundings or even in work environments, like you just
Yeah.
always are ready to hate the other girl, you know? They don't even have
Yeah.
to be smarter or more pretty than you. Like it's almost like it's been embedded that like don't like the other girl. You know, that's why we find that a lot of girls hang out with a lot of homies like, no, I mean, I'm a ganbamba bafana. And you're like, but
Exactly.
how? You know, like you guys share so much. Like you can't talk about a period with a guy. You know, like I had enjoy
Exactly.
but like there's nothing actually more that they can do in that particular space than you can do for another woman, you know? I think
Exactly. And being a DJ as well, a lot of my friends are male. But there's only so much of that energy you can also take in. At some point it gets a bit toxic. So I
yep.
think it's important to have females around you also just so you can bounce ideas off of, speak about emotional things. I don't know if I can pick up the phone and call the boys and be like, yo, hey, this guy or whatever, because sometimes it just
Mang
gets a little,
Hurdy.
it gets a bit, blurred linesy. So,
Yeah, yeah,
keep
yeah,
some
yeah.
women around you, keep the right energy around you. It's needed.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. And I think also maybe just a thought is that I'm actually curious in learning about the music industry. I don't have to participate in it, but
Mm.
by learning about what women go through as a collective. So maybe like a round table of women talking about how the new GBV catastrophe or pandemic that's going on in the countries are influencing or affecting them being around the celebrities who we read about in the timeline. You know, like that would be so interesting to see, like as a collective of women, like actually I'm affected or I've been affected and I didn't speak, but now I feel encouraged enough to speak. Because a lot of the times we look at people that we aspire to be like or we're motivated by, and we think that they're never affected by life. And it's so important to bring back the human aspect of yourself, to show darling, whether you're in banking, you're in a Togaza Koko and Dumba or wherever you are, literally we are facing the same situations, and
100%.
we should be able to talk about them irrespective of how popular I may be as a personality.
Yes, that's 100% one of the reasons why I wanted the podcast was for women to understand that no matter which space you're in, you're all kind of facing the same issues. And of course,
Yeah.
I've kind of experienced both sides because I did work in a bank where I did also
Yep.
kind of feel sometimes I was belittled purely because I was a female and because I was a black female, which kind of puts us at the bottom of the food chain, you know. So that was already a difficulty on its own, just kind of having that reality within a corporate space that I'll never measure up to a black male, let alone a white male within that type of a space. And then also growing into the entertainment space where it's a boys' club, and then going from a DJing space, which is a boys' club, and then hip hop, which is also another boys' club. So it's a boys' club within a boys' club. That was also
Oh,
just kind of
hectic.
tough, kind of getting into. So I think you know, kind of navigating through these spaces is the reason why
Yeah.
I hold it so dear to me, for us to be able to open up the spaces for women to realize we can rather support each other as opposed to bringing each other down, because all we have is us at the end of the day. You might hang out with your homies on the weekend, but they will definitely kick you out of the WhatsApp group if they feel like they want to talk about nudes and other details. You won't be in that
That's true.
conversation at some point,
That's
you know.
true.
And I say that from experience because I got kicked out of a group once before because they wanted to share nudes and I wasn't
Oh
allowed in.
boy. Tough crowd. Couldn't have made another group. Like honestly, like why did I
You
have to hurt
know,
your feelings like that? Like guys, gents,
yeah,
some cool
well, it is what
contact.
it is.
That's so crazy. I want to know, is there anything in particular that you do, whether I won't even lead your thought process. Is there anything that you do within your industry when you
Oh,
recognize new female talent? Is there anything perhaps behind the scenes that you do to speak to this person, perhaps welcome them? Is there like anything that you do in your, like that you've naturally were drawn to do in that space?
um, I haven't automatically like picked up the phone.
Yeah.
Um, I don't I don't know why I haven't, if I must be honest. It's not something I consciously do. But what I do
Mm,
insist on doing for myself is if I feel like I can give that person a platform in one way or another. So if
mm,
they are an artist and they're in the hip hop space, then I'll gladly play their music. If they are a
yeah.
DJ, then hopefully I'll be able to book them for one of my parties. Or if they are trying to get themselves out there in the creative space, then maybe I'll put them on the podcast. I was also very insistent on my entire team being female as well, also just for me to be able
Wow.
to push females forward. So my PR manager
Yeah.
is female, my bookings manager is female, my road manager is female, my photographer at some point was also female. So for me, it's also just trying to enable in whatever position I can to kind of give those women an opportunity. Sometimes it's small, sometimes it's something like just playing the song on the radio, but that goes a
Yeah.
long way for that specific person. So,
Definitely.
but for me, like I said, I don't automatically just pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I want to be on your team." I think I also just want to kind of see the drive in that girl, because one thing that irritates me sometimes is people expecting handouts and people expecting things on like a silver platter. I want to
Yeah,
see
yeah.
your drive. I want to see your hard work. I want to see your resilience. And if I feel that you're fighting hard to stay within this game, then by all means, I'll also back you up and I'll be there to support you. I just don't want people to feel like they demand to be in a space and demand to have
But
my
they're
support.
old.
You
Yeah.
understand? Yeah.
That is actually so interesting because, yeah, we have a lot of that tendencies actually where someone is like very expectant. And you're
Mm,
thinking, but you up to me, it's because you've seen the hard work that I've done to be in the space that I am. So why should it be any different for you? Yes, I came first,
exactly.
but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm sitting here waiting on you, you know?
Mm.
Going back to the comments, I'm seeing like a back and forth here between Ufalco, the man, aka the baby machine. Okay. And Ukwane Lengwane is saying, talking about sun gazing and asking if it doesn't hurt your eyes. And yeah, it's quite interesting. Can you tell us more about sun gazing?
Sun gazing, does it hurt
I'm
my
wondering.
eyes?
Yeah.
Maybe they need to elaborate on what the question is. I don't even know what they mean by sun gazing.
Yeah, no, Lynn, I was a bit confused when I saw that, but yeah, clearly it changed someone else's life. But it's cool. Someone also asked here, Uzandile says, so what was your occupation at the bank?
I was in commercial property. So I was a
Hmm.
consultant for commercial property finance. So you would basically come to me if you wanted to buy a building that you were going to use, obviously, for business purposes. So whether it's an
Ah,
office, whether it's a shopping center, whether it's an industrial building, whether it is I don't know, just even if you wanted to convert your house into an office, you wanted to purchase
okay.
it, and you wanted to purchase it and get finance from the bank for that position, then I would
Mm,
basically assist you with getting finance from the bank. So yeah, it's just in the property division, and it's much more complex because I know some people would call me and be like, hey, help me with the home loan. No, home loan, different
it's not the
department.
same thing.
Commercial property, different department.
It's actually so
um
crazy. Anyone who speaks about a bank, we always think of either accounting or loans or like my
yeah.
overdraft or like my bank
No,
balance. And you're like,
look,
no, guy.
essentially they're all loans, so the basic
Yeah.
principle of the bank is to borrow
Okay.
out money. So essentially
Mm,
it is all a loan, but the structures are different. The same
yeah.
way when you buy a house, it's 20 years of a loan, whereas when you buy a car, it's 5 years of a loan. So the structuring is different, the way that they view you as a client is different, the way that they assess you is different. You're more
Yeah.
likely to get an approval to get a car than you are to get an approval for a commercial property, and that's all because of your profile. So just because you
Yeah.
you got a loan to say, hey, you can get a personal loan for 50,000, it doesn't mean you can buy a shopping center. So
That is the ambition for me. So tell
yes.
me, Miss Cosmo, um, I get that you had a dream to become, or rather be in the music industry in terms of expressing yourself through music. How did you find the transition of being an employee to like literally stepping over the building? Okay, no, bad example, sorry. Um, and literally like jumping towards your dreams in terms of like sing for amaphupho wami. Like how did you move
Mm.
from being an employee to being your own boss? Like wasn't that like the most scariest thing that you've ever done?
Not actually. It was uncomfortable, but I think it was
Mhm.
uncomfortable for like 2 months, and then I got over it.
Okay.
Um, because I've just always been very independent with the way that I move.
Yeah.
I've always been one person to kind of figure out my way with how I make money. So working at the bank wasn't my first income. You know what I mean? So
Okay.
for instance, I obviously was dependent on my parents up until
Yeah.
high school, but coming into varsity, I had to kind of finance my life. And at that point, my parents weren't going to give me money. My dad only gave me enough to pour petrol so that I
No.
could drive to school and drive back home. If you finish this 500 rand, uzozibonela sisi ukuthi ufika kanjani esikolweni. So, so at that point, obviously, I'm a first year. Me, I want to do nice things. I want to see boys. I want to drink. I want to have a life.
Yes.
I want to go shopping. I want to go to Cape Town. I want to. So I've always been very like open to trying out new things and going to different places and learning different jobs so that I could make money. Like I mentioned, my dad owns a jazz bar, so I used to bartend
Yeah.
at the jazz bar
Oh,
when
that's
I was
cool.
when I was in varsity. Outside of bartending there, I also used to tutor when I was in varsity. So I tutored primary school and high school kids. I tutored English, Afrikaans, and maths.
Yes,
Um,
girl.
and
Brainchild. Yes, girl.
And then, so that was easy also because at that point when I was tutoring, because I wasn't like invoicing so much money a month, I wasn't having to pay tax. So that was a great part about it as well. We were shifting the system there. So I made a lot of my own money from that perspective. So I
Uh,
think my independence came in very early in my life where I was able to travel and shop and do a lot of things on my own without depending on people. So getting into the corporate space and obviously getting into a structure where I have to go to report to somebody Monday to Friday was very
yeah.
difficult for me. I'm not even gonna lie. Like I
Oh, yeah.
loathed every part of my working there only purely because it just felt so stringent. And like I said, the
Yeah.
corporate environment can also be very toxic because they expect you to literally work to the
Conform.
bone. So they
Yeah.
were expected to work to the bone, and then you only get paid peanuts, and they don't even care about you meeting your targets or whatever the case may be. So, being a very independent person, it's hard to find yourself in a very structured place.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there are those people who love working in offices, and kudos to them.
Definitely.
I'm
Yeah.
just not one of those people.
Mm.
And I think why it helped a little bit as well that I was in a consulting role, because with that, I was able to be out of the
Mm.
office often and go and see clients and go and see buildings. But obviously, leaving that space and getting into the entertainment space was difficult, because the only difficult part about it was knowing that I'm not going to get a salary on the same day every month anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's something I needed to adjust to. But outside of that, I had already created spaces for me to make money before I left the bank. So I had joined YTKO, so I was on YFM. I was earning a salary there, and then after leaving YFM, I joined 5FM. So there was money coming from 5. I was on Channel O, so I was making money from there. And also, just like the DJing, also just got to a point where I actually got to a point where I started making my salary in a weekend. And that's when I knew I
Mm.
needed to leave.
No, it makes a lot of sense, bruh. I
Yeah.
know, I absolutely struggle with corporate. Like, I'm a person that you can't tell me what to do, and please don't
Exactly.
bother. You know, like, if you write down my deliberate, like what's expected of me, trust I'll deliver, but don't tell me what to do. Like, I don't know, in my mind it just clicks different. So yeah, I can
Mm.
absolutely understand that, especially also with the not knowing when your next paycheck will be and the inconsistency
Mm.
of that. So I'm just glad that you had also that those opportunities around you to shape you to be this person that you are. I want to know, what would you say to to the 10-year-old self? This is a question from Uputi. Uti, Miss Cosmo, what would you say to the 10-year-old you, if you were to visit the past and have a conversation with a 10-year-old you? What would you say? I hope my English sounds right. Yo, mama, like there's a lot of repetition there, but now we got you. We got you. Even it's a safe space. You know, we got you.
What would I say? I would say go for
Yeah.
your dreams. I would say, um, don't be too shy. Jump on that stage and shout to the shout and make yourself heard. I think
Yeah.
I say that now, because I knew when I was a child that I wanted to be in entertainment. I just
Yeah.
didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't know how I was going to achieve it. And I knew I had the spirit in me. I think
Yeah.
I taught myself to be timid, because when people around you start saying, yeah, yeah, 1, 2, 3, yeah, yeah, what about school? What about this, that, and the next thing? So for me, I think that's kind of what pulled me back a little bit. So I
Yeah.
think back on it now, and I say to myself, you should have gone for all of those castings back when you were a child. You should have gone for all those opportunities when you were younger.
Yeah.
Because I feel my career started very late, when some people are starting way earlier than what I did.
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, my journey is my journey, but I really feel like if I had the opportunity, I would have started earlier.
My follow-up question is, what would you do if you knew you wouldn't fail?
Oh man, I would probably be in a spaceship and I'd be shooting off to the moon. I'm a big risk taker, so I'm one of those. I would have just jumped off and done whatever was in front of me. So I find myself as being a bit of a cautious person with regards to, like, I take risks, but I always calculate my risks
Yeah,
before
yeah,
I
yeah.
actually jump into them.
Yeah.
So if I knew I wouldn't fail, trust me, I would have packed my bags. I would have moved overseas. I would have taken whatever opportunity was in front of me. But because I'm so, you know, pros and cons, conversation in my head, that's kind of one
Mhm.
of the reasons why, okay, I'll do this, but maybe I'll do it in a year's time, or maybe I'll do this, but let me kind of gather this first. And that's one of the habits I'm trying to push myself away from, because it does kind of push your plans back instead of jumping for them
Yeah,
immediately. Mm.
definitely. In closing, I would love for you to let me know at your, I didn't say your tender age of 32, what has been
It's
your
my birthday on
proudest
Tuesday.
on Tuesday? Excellent, right? This is a birthday present to Miss Cosmo. Shout out to her. What is your highlight in your whole career that you feel like, you know what, I need to top this, but right now this is like a benchmark that I've set and I did exceptionally well at this. Like, what when you pat yourself on the back, what pops up for you?
You know, funny enough, I get this question all the time and I'm never able to
Okay.
answer it. I can never answer it. Um, I think for me, it's a little bit of everything. I think it's taking the risk to start making music, taking the risk to be a DJ, because what the
Yeah.
hell? Um,
Also.
DJing overseas. I mean, I've had opportunities to go to places like Dubai and to Miami as well, which was my first international experience. Going to the UK as well, so that for me was also just a big achievement. But I think
Mm,
every time I kind of put something ahead of myself and I achieve it, even if it's on a small scale, it might not be like a big hit, but for me, just to be able to get through the music making process and releasing the song is an achievement in itself for me. So um and I guess as I keep trying to, reach a different point in my life, it will always kind of
yeah.
top the next. So
Yeah.
yeah, I can't really say which one it is. I think it's a little bit of everything.
But that's also fair enough because like you've put in the energy, like you've put in the
Mm.
time. So to single them out, it's almost like you'll also be rubbing yourself. So I can actually relate, and kudos to you for not actually picking one and realizing that everything has your name on it. Therefore, be
Yes.
proud of it. So what are you working on right now that you would love people to know or follow or tune into? What you're busy with right now?
At the moment, I'm still with Scoop Makatini. We're doing the podcast, so tune in on Tuesdays. So we have our podcast at 7 p.m. every Tuesday on our YouTube channel.
Oh,
So
cool.
on that podcast, we basically just talk about pop culture. We talk about what's happening within the entertainment industry, and we just weigh in on it. And everybody hates our opinions, but it's fine because it's
It's
healthy.
okay. Yeah.
So
Don't
you
tune
can have
in.
your opinions, do you? And we also have a pop radio segment of it as well, where we kind of interview different artists and industry players, and we bring them
Yeah.
on to kind of have a chat with them as well. Outside of podcast and pop radio, I am working on my music. So
Mm,
hopefully that's also going to, speed up a little bit more. I'm going to be recording music videos for both those singles very soon.
yeah.
So that's going to be dropping. I'm quite excited for both Booty as well as Baningi. So I'm excited about that as well. And yeah, man, I think it's also just kind of spreading my wings to try and do more stuff in a digital space, because COVID has forced us to think further than just the club. So I think
Yes.
I'm also just trying to, pick up from where I had dropped off and see where else I can space myself.
Okay, that's cool. Can you please help me get an interview with Scoop? Because I'd really like to talk to him. Just a side note.
Yeah. And Scoop's extremely spiritual. Hey, you could actually have a really amazing
Exactly.
conversation with him.
I really
And
appreciate that.
yeah, because I mean, we speak about it all the time, especially because I see him on the weekend and he tells me about how
Yeah.
he just went home to PE, began some sebenzi, and he was with his
Ah, cool.
family and 1, 2, 3. So it's things like that that are really helpful within my exploring my spirituality, but also
Yeah.
understanding that some other people have other ways of sharing things. And the interesting part also is finding out how different cultures do different things, because
Yep.
my mom is Zulu, my dad's Xhosa. So
Okay.
I realized the differences on how Zulu people do certain things and how Xhosa
Yeah.
people do certain things. And it's just like, as much as we're all Nguni, there's still differences in certain
Yep.
places. So yeah, man, I'll definitely get you in touch. I'm sure he'd love to. He'd love to speak to you.
Ah, excellent. I appreciate that. For you, in closing, what is the one message or something that always sits in your heart, in your spirit, that you would like just want people to know? Like it could literally be on any topic, but what's the like a message that you feel like people should like be aware of, like woke to?
Um, Geez, I don't know. My mind changes every day because I'm always learning something.
Yeah.
Um, what would I say? Oh, okay. So I've recently gone back into therapy,
Mm,
purely because I mean, just COVID was just a weird time, and I think we're all
yeah.
trying to kind of like gather ourselves and get back into a better space. I think people really need to pay attention to their mental health. I think it's very important. I'm realizing it a lot. Maybe because I've got the privilege of being in private therapy, but I do feel people also need to understand that there is public therapy that is available for humans. And I say that as from a perspective of, I don't think we all realize how our lives get affected by daily occurrences and that actually kind of stick with us every day. And people say you only have PTSD when you go through something traumatic, and it's like, no, but something as small as a breakup, well, it's not small, but I mean, like, a breakup can be traumatic, a divorce can be traumatic, maybe failing a test can be traumatic for you. You know what I mean? So I really feel that it's very important for people to be able to have someone to speak to. Maybe you're not going into a professional therapy, but maybe just to have somebody on the side to kind of express yourself and offload, because I think the offloading is what makes it easier for people to be in therapy and not necessarily bottling in. Because when you weigh yourself heavy and you weigh yourself down, that's what keeps you down and you can't really push forward to the next day. And lockdown was very tough for everybody in this country. So I do think it's important for us to have outlets to speak. So please try and investigate on things like SADC. There's a lot of numbers that are up on social media. There's also opportunities. If you go to your local clinic, they'll be able to say places that are subsidized by government. I know people don't know this information. I only realized it when I heard about it recently. So there are a lot of therapy opportunities that are subsidized by government where you'd probably only pay about 100 Rand a session, but you're getting professional help. And there's a lot I'm learning about myself and patterns that I've had throughout my life that I'm only realizing now, that have been detrimental to my life, that I'm only realizing now because I'm in therapy. So I think it's important for people to kind of switch on that switch to go through these things so that they can be better people, you know?
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's also, I find, it's something so very intimate, you know, like it's not something that you would generally share. So thank you for showing us your vulnerability and realizing that actually I know I've got inner work to do and I'm willing to work through my own issues. And as much as I look, you know, picturesque in all my photos and in the social media platforms, I am too human and I still have to maintain myself with self. And this is what I have to do to maintain that. Thank you so very much, Ms. Cosmo, for joining us this evening. There are a couple of thank yous from the people here. Uflako's back again saying, Ms. Cosmo, I actually support you with the idea of empowering females in the music industry. Uzandile says, thank you, Kokomoya and Ms. Cosmo. I'm so cheered up. I love Ms. Cosmo's humor, though. What says, big up, Ms. Cosmo. So true. So, hey, girl, it seems like you're taking my people with you, girl. But anyway, we live to share. Thank you so much, Ma, for joining us this evening. I absolutely loved having you on the platform and for conversating with you. I wish you all the very best with your endeavors, and I wish that your light shines and radiates even further than what it is right now. I wish you the very best of everything that your heart desires, and you are, ma'am, the person that you think you are.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you reaching out. Thank you for your patience, because I know I was delayed with replying to your email. But yeah, man, I really enjoy just having conversations. I mean, it's part of the reason podcast as well. So I think people need to keep engaging. They keep needing opportunities to hear what other people have to say. Also, so that people know that they're not going through certain things on their own. There's different people who are going through similar situations. And that's the importance of having conversations. So thank you so much for bringing me on.
Thank you so much, Ma. And always remember to explore everything that resonates within your heart. If you can think about it and it doesn't leave your spirit, chase it until you understand the why.
Yes. Everything happens for a reason. Yeah.
Right? Come on with it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Touch, hit me.